Welcome, everyone. Today we have an enlightening segment. The Spotlight on Services Family Consultation is presented today by Del Oro and Passages Caregiver Resource Centers. During this lunchtime chat, we will hear how family consultants empower and support family caregivers. So hopefully you brought your lunch with us today. If you have questions about family consultation during the presentation, please enter them in the chat, and time permitting, we will address them at the end of the conversation. So I'm your host today, Jessica Melcher with Passages Caregiver Resource Center. I'm the education specialist for them, and on and off, I have cared for both my parents. Maggie, please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Maggie McNamara. I'm a family consultant with Passages. I have been with Passages for almost 18 years, and I've been doing this job for almost 20. And I also I cared for my mom who had vascular dementia.
Thank you. Stephanie, please introduce yourself.
Hi there, my name's Stephanie Wilson, and I'm a family consultant with Del Oro Caregiver Resource Center, and I've been with Del Oro for a total of 14 years. And I've supported my family in caregiving as well with my grandparents.
Thank you. Simone, please introduce yourself.
Hi there. I'm Simone Nizel. I'm the Education and Outreach Coordinator at Del Oro Caregiver Resource Center. I've been here a little over 3 years, but I was actually a client in the past. And while I was caring for my mother who had metastatic breast cancer, which traveled to her brain and sort of looked like dementia. So I have the perspective of being both a client of the CRCs and being an employee. I'm really happy to be here today.
Thank you. We're excited to have this presentation, and I'm excited to hear, what the role of the family consultant is and what we do for our members in this California Caregiver Resource Center system. So, Simone, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Jesse. I'm going to ask some questions to get the conversation started. Maggie and Stephanie, I'll direct most of these questions to you. And to start off, Stephanie, would you share with us, in your own words, what is family consultation and what does a family consultant do?
Sure, I'd be happy to. As I see family consultation, it's the meat and potatoes of what we do here in the CRC system. It's providing a supportive phone conversation to help support family caregivers and look at care planning, look at next steps, look at the resources, as well as the funding that we receive to help with direct services. As a family consultant, I'm a professional that cares about you, the family caregiver, and we can talk about what's happening, look at next steps. And always my goal is to not add more to your plate necessarily, but to provide those supportive resources and those next steps.
Wonderful. Maggie, do you care to elaborate in your own words about what family consultation is, what you do as a family consultant?
Sure. I don't have a lot to add to what Stephanie said. She really covered it pretty well. But one of the things I'd like to let people know is that mm, part of the most important thing I see is that as a family consultant, I listen to the caregiver to try to determine what those resources that Stephanie was talking about are. I want to not just listen, but actually hear what they're saying. I want to know the story. And I hope that we are able to validate their story because when people initially come to, at least in my experience, come to the CRC, they've been needing some help for quite some time. So we do try to direct them to the resources and educate and empower them.
Wonderful. Thank you, ladies, for those responses. Maggie, I'll start with you for this next question. Can you share a story with us about your initial contact with a family caregiver? What did what does this look like?
You know, I've done so many over the years. I really thought a lot about this, and there are so many stories. But when people call, some people are being proactive. So they know that something is coming down the road and they just want the information. But most people, when they call, are confused. They don't know what's happening with their loved one. I will say that most of my clients are caring for someone with Alzheimer's disease or some other related dementia or neurological disorder. They, um, so the caregiver is usually kind of distraught, very upset, and probably should have called 2 years before they called. And one of my caregivers was 98 years old. He was taking care of his 94-year-old wife who had Alzheimer's disease. I mean, and so that's one of the ends. And another client that I had was 32, and she was caring for her husband who had early onset Alzheimer's, and they had 4 children ranging from 2 to 9. So there's a great deal of uh, difference and different people from all walks of life.
Right. I mean, you just identified, yeah, two very different groups, right? Just in your anecdote, you sounds like you've had contact with sandwich generation caregivers or people who are caring for a partner or a parent and they're parenting themselves. So,
Absolutely.
um, yeah, thank you for sharing that. Stephanie, I'll bounce over to you. Can you share a story or even just an insight about your initial contact with a family caregiver? What has this looked like for you, or what does this typically look like for you?
Well, I think like Maggie said is, it's about their story and it's not just what they're going through today, but it's almost like what's led up to today and what does their support team look like? What strategies have they tried? I always tell clients that, we work together, right? And that they know their situation much better than I do. And so my role is to identify what are some options, what are some resources, and that way they can pick and choose. And so whenever I'm talking with a client for the first time, I always start off with just tell me about what's happening in your caregiving situation and we'll go from there. And so while they're sharing, I'm listening for what are their concerns, what might be some needs that are coming up, how can Del Oro or the Caregiver Resource Center system best support them. And oftentimes they are overwhelmed with just so much, right? And I think oftentimes they're surprised with the idea that we're not only focused on the person they're caring for and their well-being, but we're also focused on the caregiver and their well-being and just acknowledging all the layers of caregiving, that it's not just caring for this other person and themselves, but also life, managing the household and oftentimes maybe other people that depend on them, like, children of all ages, from what I found,
Yeah,
which is really
yeah,
helpful. And I
definitely.
think too, just reassuring them there's no two situations the same. And I think that's what I really like about being a family consultant is we can really personalize it to their concerns, their needs, and what next steps they see for themselves, and just trying to figure out how can I best support them through that.
Wonderful. Thank you both for sharing that. And it sounds like this initial point of contact, you really do get a sense of family caregivers' specific situations. No two are alike. You really hear their stories, and we have a process within the CRC system of intake and assessment, in which the family consultants are very much involved. And you've really touched upon that intake process, right? That initial contact. But could you speak a little bit about the assessment piece too? What does that look like when you're interfacing with a family caregiver? Stephanie, would you mind starting us off? What are you
Sure. Well,
assessing for? Sorry.
oh, it's all good. It's all good. So once we understand what the caregiver is looking for, what needs that they have, we walk through what we call our care evaluation or our assessment, and it focuses on the needs of the person they're caring for, like activities of daily living, but also maybe cognitive changes that are happening, whether or not their loved one can be left home alone, and for what amount of time. Oftentimes, that brings up the idea of respite, which is time off for the caregiver, like in-home care, adult daycare. But our care evaluation really taps into, what are the needs of the care receiver, the person they're caring for, and then we look at what are the resources that they have available to them. What are they already utilizing, and then how can we maybe fill in some of those gaps? And then, especially, kind of the third tier of our evaluation is the caregiver's well-being, physical health, emotional health, and their well-being overall, and looking at mental health, depression, anxiety, um, and oftentimes, as I tell my clients, we're human, and so oftentimes once we go through the care evaluation, we can really acknowledge that yes, there is a lot going on. Yes, there is a lot they're coping with, so it's understandable that they're feeling the way they're feeling, and definitely acknowledging, those gold stars of reaching out for support, because that's easier said than done.
Great. Thank you. Maggie, did you want to add
Stephanie,
anything
oh,
about?
sorry. Simone, can I jump in here? I just want to
Of course.
reiterate and with Stephanie about making a good point and how connecting with a family consultant through the Caregiver Resource Centers brings valuable awareness as a family caregiver because we don't when we're caring for our loved ones, our focus is on them. And so having somebody that can bring awareness and validate that, it's as important to take care of our well-being, not just emotionally, but the mental state, so we can continue on this journey with our loved one. Good point, Stephanie.
Thank you for
They're
sharing
all
that,
good
Jesse.
points. Yeah.
Yeah.
It, Pretty much you have described exactly what it is that we do. And uh, I do want to say that I feel like I'm on a game show right now. But I also, uh, s- uh, some of the things that we ask, people will say when they first call, and we'll talk. I'll give a commercial about what resources are available. What is it that the Caregiver Resource Center may be able to help somebody with, and then we'll talk about doing an intake or an assessment. And I just actually ask them, in order to enroll in this, we are going to need some information. They'll say, "What kind of information? Do I need my social security number? Do I need to give you tell you what my Edward Jones account is? Do I need, and all these kinds of things?" And I say, "No, I'm going to ask you questions like, do you feel that you don't have enough time for yourself due to the amount of time you spend caring for your loved one? Or sometimes not so loved one, right? Do you feel down, depressed, or hopeless?" And that usually helps them understand what it is I'm looking at and how we'll be able to help them. Um, the other thing, well, I'll wait till you ask, Simone. Go ahead.
Sure. Thank you for that response. And I really appreciate how you've painted a picture of how intake and assessment really allow you to customize the plan of care to whatever care giver you're working with. So even though these are standardized measures, they allow you to really get insight into what this person's situation looks like and what specific resources would most benefit them. Thank you for illuminating that. A really quick reminder to the members of our audience that if you do have any questions about family consultation, be sure to drop those into the chat. And again, time permitting, we'll loop those in at the end. Um, this next question might be a little challenging to answer, but what are some of without getting into specifics, obviously, but what are some of the challenges that you see among the family caregivers that you serve? Maggie, I'll start with you.
Sure. I'm going to say the first challenge that I see usually is that they don't have a lot of information about what's happening to their loved one. And so there are two top things that I really encourage people to do. And the first one is to learn as much as you can about the illness or disorder or whatever is happening to them. The second one is to get support from people who are doing what you're doing is usually a really good place to start. So for me, that would be um, encouraging someone to come to a class and then also coming to support groups. Now, support can also be family and friends, but one of the challenges for a lot of families or caregivers is that they are not getting that support from family or friends, or they're having people tell them what to do who really may not know um, about their situation.
Thank you for that. Stephanie, can you elaborate what are some of the challenges that you have seen with family caregivers you work with at Del Oro?
My goodness, there's so many, right? And I think that's where I really appreciate how we can personalize it, in those phone calls and we can just, it's almost like we're sitting, I tease some of my clients, I say, it's almost like we're just sitting down having coffee and that you can share with me what you're going through. And I'm not, a family member or a friend, but I'm someone that does care. And so it's, coping with, cognitive, behavior challenges, personality changes, the grief and loss that come along with roles and sharing of expectations, or even like with spousal caregivers, not having a partner in life. I talked with a gentleman yesterday, and and he was saying, it's not just caring for my wife and myself, but I've got a meal plan, I've got to cook, I've got to pay the bills, and so financial stressors are very much a part of it. And oftentimes, the reason folks call us is for funding to help, like with the cost of respite care, and communicating with the medical team. We really try to almost kind of coach our clients, right? Here are some next steps. Or I tell my clients, let's figure out how we can help the doctor check those boxes for that referral. And really helping to navigate what are the next steps, what are some of the tools that they can add to their toolbox, because it is very challenging. I think just so as far as like caregiver challenges, I think just the big picture, getting up and doing it all over again the next day, the round and round of it, 24/7, and especially if they're not getting a break. But that's where we really hone in on, how can I be most helpful to you, the caregiver, and we just go from there.
Wonderful.
But definitely taking
Wonderful.
Can
care of
I
themselves too. Go ahead.
And
Yeah.
oh, I'd
Yeah.
just like to add one thing to that. You were talking about
Please.
the gentleman that you talked to yesterday. He has to do a meal plan. He has to do all these things. And one of the things that we see a lot of is that, um, especially with couples, spouses, domestic partners, that there's a role. And now those roles are changing where you're saying he has to do a meal plan. Maybe he never cooked before. I had a caregiver who he loved that his wife could cook, and he took care of all the outside, and she took care of the inside. And then when she started not being able to follow a recipe and would put in salt instead of sugar and whatever, he realized that he would have to do this. And he came to my support group one day and said to the group, I found something wonderful. And we are all, what was it? What is it? They put salad in a bag. So it was just small little things, but 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 it really emphasizes that, he had major changes in his life. Eating is important.
Mhm. I love that. And actually, both of you answered another question that I had about how you supported family caregivers during challenging times. It sounds like, not only are family consultants resource specialists and the ones who are facilitating granted services like respite care and counseling and legal consultation, but you're also an advocate. You're also someone who can listen and be a support in that way to a family caregiver who calls you and just tells you, what's going on with them. And I appreciate that. When I'm out in the community talking about services at Del Oro, it's hard to capture family consultation. So you guys are doing such a great job here. You really are like the hub and the wheel. Um, that's the analogy that kind of makes most sense to me. Um,
Well,
Again,
we
a
are
gentleman.
also resources. A family consultant is a
You are
resource.
resources. Yes, you are a resource in and of yourself. You're connectors, but you're a resource too. Thank you for clarifying that, Maggie. That's absolutely correct. Is there anything else
And
that either
Simone,
of you would
I
like to
want,
add?
yeah,
Yes.
Simone, I just want to add too, being a client myself of Passages in the past, I found that the family consultant can, well, when you're talking to them, they make you feel normal, right? They make you feel
Mhm.
like, okay, I'm not losing it. I'm not going crazy. And having somebody to connect with and having this being part of this community does put you at ease, because it's going to be different. Every day is different, and the challenges are
Mhm.
going to be different. So having somebody that you can contact directly and they know your history, they know your customized plan and what your needs are and what you're going through does establish that relationship. So I just want to say thank you to Maggie and Stephanie, because um, I know it's not easy for you both, and it's great to have people like you, family consultants, there for the family caregiver.
That's one of the things I like too is, just that it's not a one-time phone call. And that's one of the things I really enjoy telling clients about, that I'm on your team now, right? If you sign up as a
Mhm.
client, then I am on your team too. And we talk about who else is on their team. But now they've got a family consultant and they could reach out to me anytime. And I say, you know what? If you've got something rolling around and you can't sleep at night, give me a call, leave me a voicemail, and I'll give you a call back the next day and we can talk about it. And hopefully you'll sleep a little bit better. And we
Mhm.
do follow up every 6 months to go through that care evaluation process because, as we all know, things do change over time, especially with those progressive diseases.
Oh, thank you so much for that. Um, I, Jesse, I appreciate your comment as well. And I'm reflecting back on my experience with my family consultant. And one of the things that I appreciated most was that nothing I said surprised her, too. So not only did she make me feel normal, but this is a person who's seen everything there is to see, heard everything there is to hear about family caregiving. And so I'm over here thinking that, it's shocking, like certain things about the caregiving journey are shocking or uncomfortable to talk about in polite conversation. And my family consultant is like, oh no, yeah, you're good. I'm normalizing that experience. So again, a gentle reminder to submit questions to the chat for our audience members. Matt, Maggie, I'll start again with you. As a family consultant, what is your goal for the family caregiver once they have established contact with you? What do you hope that they'll ultimately gain from being a client of the CRC system?
Probably the thing, honestly, that has kept me doing this for as long as I've done it. I tell people this is one of the hardest jobs I've ever had, but it's the best job I've ever had. And that is because I can see when I'm teaching a class on understanding dementia, or someone's in a support group and they hear someone else talk, uh, uh, and are able to relate to that person's situation, and I see the aha, and then it's that I really work hard to help someone get to that point where whatever it is for them, they realize, like Jesse was saying, they're not crazy. There are things that they can do. And like Stephanie said, you're a member of their team. There is someone that they can call. I do tell them the same thing. I say, you can call me any. I say, don't call at midnight because I'm not there. But those kinds of things but sharing the information and helping them understand what they're doing, why they're doing it, that they do have a choice, and then we can give them resources so that they can help make those choices in a way that keeps them healthy. I just want to add that especially for people caring for someone with dementia, 40 to 60% of caregivers will die before the person that they care for. So I reiterate that. Every one of my clients they'll say, tell them that statistic when somebody new comes, So we want to help them be healthy and get through this journey uh, and come out okay on the other end. I probably didn't answer your question, did I?
I think you did beautifully, Maggie. I'm kind of taking in all of these nuggets of wisdom that you and Stephanie are dropping, and I'm processing. Stephanie, I'd like to ask you the same question. Um, what's your goal for the family caregiver? What do you hope that they'll gain from entering into the CRC system?
My goodness. I think my goal is that they feel understood and that they feel heard and that they know they're not alone. And whether it's they get really frustrated with themselves or with the person they're caring for, or they've got challenging family dynamics. I've had I've had caregivers that say, I've got 6 siblings, but I'm the only one that's caring for mom, kind of an idea.
Mm,
And again, that, there's um, I I think just to feel affirmed and validated, empowered to make decisions. I think one of my
mm,
approaches is it's almost like a piece, like a puzzle, right? And when we're talking, we're kind of identifying what pieces of the puzzle do we need? What might be the right fit? Because there's no one size fits all. And just really trying to encourage the clients to really think about, what would be the best next step for them? How can I best support them with that? And then when we end our phone call, knowing that maybe they do have a couple phone calls to think about, or maybe they're going to make their list of what they need for caregiving. If someone does come over to provide them a break, even if they're not ready for that step, how can we prepare for that? And so I think just, to be thinking about, what are those next steps, and that empowerment of, they can take those steps and that they're supported, and that they can give me a call back at any point in time, but that there's no pressure either. So I just really,
mm.
I think one of the things that I oftentimes hear is, I feel so much better, but we haven't really done anything but talk about what I'm going through. And I think that's the magic of being a family consultant. And what has also kept me here, Maggie, is just sharing those experiences and going along, walking side by side, through the caregiving chapter of their lives, is really my hope.
Education, empowerment, expanding their support system. I love it. We do have a couple of questions from our audience members, so I'm going to switch gears here. Crystal asks, how, if at all, does a family consultation differ with different cultures, languages of the caregivers? So basically, how do you negotiate the diversity of your clients? And Stephanie, I'll start with you.
Well, let's see. I think, there's, as I say with my clients, there's all kinds of layers to caregiving. And so as a family consultant, we're talking about meal planning, we're talking about family dynamics, we're talking about family expectations. If language is a concern, we do have a translator service that we utilize again, so that, how can we best communicate and gain an understanding of what you and your family are going through, and that
Wonderful.
we're all learning through this. And so I think that's what I've learned most as a family consultant is through my clients. And so I always say, really appreciate when clients share their stories and their needs, and their individual family dynamics, including cultural backgrounds. So it's all of who we
Yeah,
are, right?
right. Maggie, do you
Maggie,
want
what
to
would you add?
elaborate?
Probably not a lot more than what Stephanie said. I know that one of the things that we do when I'll go back to some of that jargon, the intake. We ask questions that some people don't like to answer, but it helps us know who is in our community and who we should be serving and how we might better serve them. So we do ask race and ethnicity and questions along those lines. And uh, we would use a translator if we needed to. We actually have Spanish speaking where we are, and then we have some Native American support with rancherias where we are. A lot of the other cultural differences that I've run into, maybe Hmong and uh, Japanese, Chinese. Usually, what happens is that we are able to work with their families because they're the ones that are bringing um, the caregiver to us. So that's really helpful to have that whole dynamic there. That's it.
Thank you. We have another question from DO. Do you facilitate family meetings? Maggie, I'll start with you.
Sure. Yes, family meetings are a very important part of what we're able to help a caregiver with for a lot of different reasons. Sometimes it's just bringing the whole family on board. I would be considered, or whoever the family consultant is a neutral party, and we've received training in these kinds of meetings so that we want everybody in the room to feel safe and able to say what they need or want to
Mm.
say. We do a lot of interpretation to help everyone be able to hear, but we're happy to do a family meeting, as many as needed sometimes, so that everybody can be if not on the same page, at least understand what book they're in.
Yeah, thank you for that. I understand that the CRC system offers education too around communicating, effective communication, communicating within challenging family dynamics. So, all of this really can kind of help with, you know, even doing your own family meeting as well, outside of the CRC context. We had a question earlier that I do want to direct to Stephanie from Janelle in the audience. And it asked, what happens when caregiving ends? Can I still contact my family consultant? Stephanie, can you share your insights into this question?
Sure, sure. Well, our services are for when you're caring for the person at home, and caregiving can end for any number of reasons. And one of the things that I share with clients, typically we will close a file just because the caregiving role has ended. But at the same time, I let my clients know I'm still here, and we are a resource center, and so you are welcome to give me a call, and we can, look at what are the resources available, or if things change. Sometimes someone maybe go into a care home and then they come back home. Maybe it was more of a short-term stay. I don't know. It's not a life is not a fixed situation and things can change. And so whether that's happening or if the caregiving ends because the person that you're caring for has passed, maybe it's getting into some bereavement support groups. And so I'll have clients
Mhm.
call back and say, okay, you know what? I'm still feeling pretty heavy with all of this and could use some additional support. What do you recommend? And we can have those conversations.
Excellent. And my understanding is that family consultants do facilitate support groups as well as refer out to support groups in the community, and that's one of the important pieces of your job. In addition to answering individual family caregiver phone calls, you're also helping family caregivers in group contexts too, and connecting
That's what I
them
tell
to educate.
clients. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I tell
yeah,
clients, I
and
said, I can tell you all day long that you're not alone, but if you go to a support group and you are hearing it from other people in the room when you go to bed that night, it's just it's gonna be different. It's gonna soak in differently because you are
Wow.
really going to know I am not alone. And
Yeah,
sometimes that can be really good medicine because it can be a lonely job sometimes.
It's also a
definitely.
good place for problem solving. I have people that will tell me, "Oh, nope, nope, support group, I'm not going." Because it's group therapy, it means I'm crazy, whatever. And if I can just usually encourage them to come one time, it's like what Stephanie is saying. They realize that they're not alone, but it's also a place that they can find out that there is salad in a bag. They can find out uh, who to go see for this problem, and you know who did what to help put the alarms in their house, whatever it is. The problem solving part is so important. I know I do
Mhm.
5 groups a month, so I
Wow.
think it's really important.
Wow. Yeah. I want to
Thank you,
thank you
Maggie.
both.
Yes.
And
Yeah, I want to
I
say I
do want
can.
to pass it over to you, Jesse. We're at time.
Yeah, I just want to be mindful of our audience time. I know where it's almost at the lunch hour, and some people I know only get the half hour. So thank you for sharing that with us. But I just want to say, Maggie, Stephanie, Simone, I can keep, talking with you ladies about this. We could probably do it all day, right? So, but thank you for sharing your thoughts. And Simone, thank you for those wonderful questions. And to our audience for posing your questions. And thank you for tuning in today. To reach out to your local Caregiver Resource Center, visit caregivercalifornia.org. Again, that's caregivercalifornia.org to get connected to your local California Caregiver Resource Center and get connected to a local family consultant in your area. And to hear more stories from our family consultants, go to the Caregiver California YouTube channel and find the Meet Our Family Consultants series. They're great, really short videos, so you can even meet some of your family consultants in your area before you call them. So thank you again to Maggie, Stephanie, Simone, and our audience. Until next time.
Thanks, Shell.